following program is intended for mature audiences.
Rudy's revelation.
The New World Order.
This is a conspiracy.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. It is Tuesday, July 8th. Well, what's going to be happening? What's happening in this summer? Well, it's going to be a big deportation summer, which I believe will lead to an amnesty deal. Trump's already talking about it. Also, Jeffery Epstein, the intelligence community wants to close this case so fucking bad. They're willing to gaslight the American public. I don't think we're going to let him get away with it. So, although I like Dan Bongino and Kash Patel, they've obviously been hoodwinked by national security. So we're going to talk about that as well. So let's get into the headlines. Got over 30 headlines to get through. So let's read the news. All right, today we're going to start off with a few from Zero Hedge. Now, this was from yesterday, and I forgot to get it in the... Of course, I had a few headlines that went missing yesterday. So this was one of them. They went into a weird folder. I was lucky to come across them at all, but I did remember this one because I thought the headline was actually funny. The FBI concludes Jeffrey Epstein had no clients, didn't blackmail anyone, and definitely didn't kill himself. So if you were the intelligence community and he was an asset and the CIA didn't want to be portrayed as being involved in a pedophilia child sex trafficking ring, which they have before, and I don't want to get into this. There's a lot of things that are misunderstood about psychological warfare and sexual deviancy, particularly pedophilia, but also transgenderism and on all this other stuff. I don't want to digress into there, but the CIA has long had their hands in pedophilia for a number of different reasons and sexual deviancy, etc. But the fact that people think that the intelligence community isn't involved in this is ridiculous. Let's go on. The deceased financier, is he a financier? That's a stretch. Jeffrey Epstein and his colleague, Ghislaine Maxwell, were both charged by the Justice Department with sex trafficking. And Maxwell was convicted, but according to the DOJ, the two apparently didn't have any clients. And this is the issue, the main issue. So since, it's over a decade for me, but close to 2 decades for some other people who have been following this guy, the fact of the matter is that at least the law enforcement has uncovered the fact that there was a child sex trafficking ring. Trafficking to whom? Now, the Justice Department and the FBI or the intelligence community seem to think that we will believe that someone or people, Maxwell and Epstein, created a child sex trafficking ring just for Jeffrey Epstein to have sex with. And he did have sex with most of these young women. Girls, really, but, young teenagers. And that there was no one else, even though people were being flown to the island, you have photographs of young women with prominent people, including Prince Andrew. And then this happens right after the supposed suicide of the biggest witness in the case, which was, what was her name? Jeffery. Virginia. I think it was Virginia Jeffery. Purportedly shot herself in Australia after almost being killed in a bus accident. Purportedly. We have two different sides of that story. So anytime you have this sort of intrigue, your spidey sense should go up and you should say, you should call bullshit. Because if the people that have the most to lose are giving you what seems to be a fake story or unbelievable story, then you know it's a lie. Because they're mounting a defense, right? Nobody else is going to be implicated except the intelligence agencies. That's why they're evoking national security and saying, well, you can't let this out. And we even had some people involved in Jeffrey Epstein's original case saying that he was owned by intelligence, protected. And given Ghislaine Maxwell's past and her father's past being closely aligned or being an asset of Mossad, and also he died mysteriously, doing basically the same thing. But now the FBI is saying there's no blackmail, there's no client list, there are no clients. And Jeffrey Epstein didn't blackmail anyone. Well, we don't know that. That's like saying P. Diddy didn't blackmail anybody. We don't know. So it goes on. Epstein and Maxwell are both accused of sex trafficking, says Ken Silva on X. And Maxwell was convicted, but the DOJ and the FBI say they don't have any evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. So they don't want to look any further, because if they dig any deeper, they're going to start uncovering CIA assets, etc. The FBI also reiterated its previous claim that Epstein did kill himself in an attempt to demonstrate that the FBI cell block was secure the night that he purportedly killed himself. The FBI released footage from the one camera that was recording. However, the camera only showed a teeny sliver of a staircase leading to Epstein's cell. The DOJ report also revealed that prison officials actually knew about the malfunctioning cameras the day before Epstein died. Mysterious. Also, those cameras had numerous blind spots. Only 2 cameras in Epstein's housing unit were recording. The camera in the Epstein cell block, which had at least 3 other inmates, wasn't recording, nor was the camera covering the elevator bays that led to Epstein's floor. So a lot of these cameras weren't working. Plus, the footage they did, and I'm going to get to this in just a second with this next headline, the footage they did release was missing a minute. Well, we'll get to that in this next Zero Hedge. This is from today. 12 key questions that all Americans should ask about the shameful attempt to cover up the truth about Jeffrey Epstein. Why were Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell arrested and charged with operating an enormous sex trafficking ring that supposedly involved thousands of clients if no such clients ever existed? No, the client list didn't exist. Why did U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi tell Fox News in February that Epstein's client list was sitting on my desk ready to review? That's question number 2. Question number 3. What was in the thousands of documents related to the Epstein case that were suddenly discovered in February in the New York City FBI office? And we have footage of the FBI taking out hundreds of boxes of what appeared to be DVDs and videotapes from Epstein Island. What was on those videotapes? Also, number 4, when Bondi claimed the Epstein flight logs would make you sick in March, what did she mean by that? Number 5, in May, Bondi confessed that there were tens of thousands of videos related to the Epstein investigation. Number 5, Number 6, other than Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, why hasn't anyone else be involved in the sex trafficking operation been arrested? Number 7, the memo that was released on Sunday night says that there will be no further disclosures in the case. Case closed. Does this mean the Trump administration's search for the truth ends here? Also, number 8, the memo also states that there's no evidence that could predicate an investigation against uncharged third parties. Does this mean that none of the men that were having sex with underage girls will ever be brought to justice? Okay, so a couple of things we have to understand here. The reason Jeffrey Epstein had, and don't forget, the Attorney General of the Bahamas, which governs Little St. James Island, against the administration, governing administration there. She went against the governing administration to charge Jeffrey Epstein with pedophilia or having sex with underage girls, and said that they might be other people that are charged in the case. That originally drove the retrying and the arrest of Jeffrey Epstein, was what that brave individual did, the Attorney General there, that woman, did in the Bahamas. Or was it the Virgin Islands? Excuse me, Virgin Islands. Sorry about that. The point being is like, this is dead and buried because there are powerful people that are on the client list, which may or may not ever existed. The fact that, did Jeffrey Epstein have a list of people? No, but we knew about people. We had reports of people. But the fact is that FBI or somebody didn't go through all the videotape and use face recognition to figure out who these people were and what have you. Was Trump in there? Is that why it's not being? You know, are they just going to refer to the flight manifest? Because that's not a true indication of who had sex with underage girls. So it certainly warrants an investigation. But the fact is, to say that there was no clients for this sex trafficking ring is they're gaslighting you. I mean, when people tell you the obvious, they tell you an obvious lie, I should say. On the night that Epstein died, why were there so many strange coincidences? Well, I don't have to go through all of them. The guards that fell asleep. He said he would have a cellmate. Two cameras in front of Epstein's unit was malfunctioning. Hours of video footage from outside Epstein's cell on the night that he died have been released. Do they think we wouldn't notice a full minute that has been cut out of that video footage? Like I said yesterday, you can even freeze frame to make it look like nothing's happening in there. But there were, if you looked at the footage, there were a lot of people moving around and what have you, because it was a jail. It wasn't really a prison. So people are admitted at all times of the day and night. But as I suspected, and of course what we found out, was there's a full minute missing. You don't think someone could walk into his cell and strangle him in a minute and walk out? Was that minute just before the paramedics arrived? Like I said, breathe, Epstein, breathe, as they're choking him out. Does anybody know who the paramedics were? And there's more. During the time that Elon Musk has unprecedented access to government computers, did he not learn some startling truths about the Epstein investigation? Why was the memo about Epstein case released to the public late on Sunday and 4th of July weekend? Well, we know why, because over the week, on the weekends, or especially on a Friday, is a bad news day, because, or a good news day. It depends. It's a holiday weekend, bad news day, because people don't talk about the news. The best news day is, Well, there are two theories here. Best news day is Friday because people will talk about it over the weekend. Really, the best news day is in the beginning of the week because people will talk it at the water cooler all week long. A lot of times people switch off on the weekend, so especially on a holiday weekend. So there's a lot, and you see there's another, yet another, here it is. Sorry, I jumped the gun here. I think this one has it. We're going to move on to the BBC. Jeffrey Epstein jail CCTV erased by technical errors. Okay, this article is from January 2020, but the reason it's here is because this is important. So, first off, surveillance video from the disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein's first suspected suicide attempt was destroyed by accident. You know what you're saying? You're saying, what? First suspected suicide attempt was destroyed by accident. And you're saying, what? Say, yeah. U.S. prosecutors say the jail mistakenly saved footage from the wrong cell. Why? Because Jeffrey Epstein, a convicted sex offender, as the BBC says, first tried to kill himself in July of 2019. Excuse me. In July, a month before he actually turned up dead. Then hanged himself in jail in August while awaiting trial on federal sex charge. Okay, so that's the BBC or MI5 giving you propaganda. Because he didn't first try to kill himself. Actually, Jeffrey Epstein said, my cellmate tried to strangle me. And then he recanted because he said, I woke up and I wasn't sure what happened. I thought I was being strangled. He had pleaded not guilty to abusing dozens of girls, some as young as 14. Soon after Epstein's death in August, 2 of the CCTV cameras outside his cell had malfunctioned and were being examined by the FBI media reports. So what exactly are we talking about here? Well, let me tell you. Oops. Epstein was found semi-conscious in his prison cell with injuries to his neck on the 25th of July. After this incident, he was placed on suicide watch, only for 2 weeks. Hold on a second. Only for 2 weeks. Eventually, Epstein was moved to a different cell where he died on August 10th. Now, here's the fucked up part, is that Jeffrey Epstein, he was in a different cell with a roommate who supposedly tried to strangle him, which he said, but even though the reports now say that, oh no, he tried to kill himself. Even though he woke up and he felt like he was being strangled, and we're going to get to it. Hold on here. 2 prison guards have since been accused of failing to check on him during this time and falsifying records to say that they had. Not only that, but the first time back in July 25th, when his cellmate tried to strangle him, also the footage of that was deleted by accident. So this is 2 weeks before we have the same fucking anomalies. And also during that time that the guards failed to check on him during that incident. So even after he was placed on suicide watch for 2 weeks and then it was removed, then he was killed. There have been ongoing questions over the July recording, which was initially deemed missing and then said to have been located by jail staff. And then a letter filed by Assistant U.S. Attorney Jason Swergold and Maureen Comey, yes, the daughter of James Comey, the disgraced, corrupt FBI director. The footage contained on the preserved video was from the correct date and time, but captured a different tier than the one that cell 1 was located. So they erased the footage of Jeffrey Epstein being assaulted and preserved the wrong one. The requested video no longer exists on the backup system and has not at least since August 2019 as a result of technical errors. The request for the video was made by the lawyer of Nicholas Tartaglione, a former New York City police officer who shared a cell with Epstein in July and was charged with homicide in an unrelated case. But you know how he committed the homicide, Tartaglione, which was a huge roid-head bodybuilder cop. He strangled the guy to death in front of his brother and another friend, the victim's brother and another friend, and then took those people out into a field in New York, in rural New York, and shot them in the back of the head, execution style. So this guy, who is accused of murdering somebody by strangling them, is put into a cell with Jeffrey Epstein. And amazingly, there's another incident where Epstein thought he was being strangled by Tartaglione while he was sleeping. So even though the request was made by the lawyer of Nicholas Tartaglione, we know the fact that it was already destroyed. This is a conspiracy. So people are saying, he was killed by agents of a foreign government. Yeah, maybe, who knows? The reality here is that he was killed in a conspiracy which involved people working at the jail, obviously, who could be easily paid a lot of money in cash, so there's no trace. And all they have to do is look the other way. It's the FBI that's the problem. People that go to examine footage and then the footage mysteriously disappears. Do you remember 9/11 where the Ramada Inn that was across from the Pentagon that had a surveillance camera pointing right at the front lawn of the Pentagon where supposedly it was hit by a jetliner? The FBI came to confiscate the footage, and it never materialized after that. Purportedly, even staff of the Ramada Inn saw the footage and were awestruck by what they saw. Okay, let's move on, if we may. PJ Media, the left's sick response to the Texas floods will make your blood boil. It's absolutely a tragedy. The question we have to ask is whether any liability to notify or warrant was impacted by decreases DOJ on weather services. And now this was originally their ploy. Yeah, I'm sorry, I was rushing today. To get things together. I want to make sure I keep all the topics. And we're going to have to race through because we don't have a ton of time left. The reason being is that the Democrats were looking to blame Republicans and specifically Donald Trump. And this was what I posited yesterday, is that yes, there's weather modification. Could somebody in DARPA, in the deep state, create the supercell upriver from these places which are known to be vulnerable to flash floods. Could someone decide to impact an area that was subject to flash flooding, to kill lots of people, to then blame Donald Trump? The reason I bring this up, first of all, is because they were, when they're so ready with the response, you have to question the motive that created the crisis in the first place. Like, let's say, if you remember Katrina and the Ninth Ward of New Orleans and how that was kind of a shithole, and they didn't fix the levees specifically around that district that now can be rebuilt without shitholeness. You know, this was during Bush. And so, of course, at the time, we questioned the fact that the Army Corps of Engineers was repairing all the levees and then stopped short of the levee protecting the Ninth Ward. Sure enough, hurricane hits, et cetera, et cetera. All right. There is a silver lining here. Who is Scott Ruskin, Coast Guard hero, saves 165 people from Texas floods? Well, this is a young kid right out of the academy. I think this was his first job post. And within the first week or two of his being deployed, he saves 156 people. Good for him. Now, that's a hero. Thank you for your service, Mr. Ruskin. All right, let's go on to what I was fucking saying before. Can I go to this? So this was a Newsweek article on Scott Ruskin. Coast Guard hero saves 165 people from Texas flood. And this is what I wanted to talk about. Officials feared flood risk to youth camps but rejected warning system. So, 8 years ago, and this is the New York Times, mind you, 8 years ago, in the aftermath of yet another river flood in the Texas Hill Country, officials in Kern County debated whether more needed to be done to help build a warning system along the banks of the Guadalupe River. A series of summer camps along the river were often packed with children. For years, local officials kept them safe with a word-of-mouth system. When flood water started raging, upriver camp leaders warned those downriver of the water surge coming their way. But they don't take, they say, see, because regular flooding is not flash flooding. And that's the problem with the desert. If you have severe rain upstream, you know, inches of rain, 6 inches, 8 inches or more, it could cause, and the Guadalupe River rose 26 feet in 45 minutes. That's considered a flash flood. So it's not just flooding. When flood water started raging, no, flash flood, it happens immediately. The rising water, and if you're sleeping, the rising water will happen so fast that by the time you wake up, you won't know what the fuck's happening. And if it's nighttime, you're dust. So they knew about this, and they did nothing. And so the Democrats want you to believe that somehow Trump, even though there was 12-hour warning for the flash floods, people weren't warned, people that were at the camps and people weren't warned sufficiently. And the communities along the Guadalupe River, which is known for flash floods, did not invest in an early warning system that involves sirens. I mean, where I live, a lot of the communities have that for a purported tsunami, which would never happen here. So, like, the communities that have it don't need it, and then communities that need it don't have it. Terrible thing. All right, let's keep moving. Fox News, Marines team up with ICE in bold move to boost threat awareness at critical military bases. Trump administration strengthens installation protection following incidents involving illegal entrants. MSNBC, how ICE's massive cash infusion is poised to transform America. Republicans gave $45 billion to help ICE detain hundreds of thousands of immigrants and another $100 billion to further supercharge Trump's mass deportations. That's great. That's going to be the super ICE summer. And I'll tell you in a minute what it's going to involve. Now, MSNBC and the Democrats want you to believe that, the intended result is as aggressive as it is likely transformative. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is slated to become the largest law enforcement agency, blah, blah, blah. Temporarily. What I have always said, in the 6 months since President Donald Trump returned to the White House, there have been a surge in ICE raids, detentions, and removals. The majority of targets in this increase are not the hardened criminals. So they say. Everybody that is here illegal is subject to deportation. Period. I don't care. I don't care. If you were seeking asylum, the way that you're supposed to do it is go to your embassy or to go to a point of entry and declare asylum and then remain, presumably in Mexico, until that asylum is granted. Crossing the border illegally is an illegal act, and you cannot claim asylum after you do something illegal, because if you break America's laws and then claim asylum, you'll be rejected because you're a criminal, essentially. So the two don't work together, even though the Democrats tried to change that law. LA Mayor Karen Bass confronts ICE agents in MacArthur Park during a apparent immigration raid. The second I heard about this, I went to the park to speak to the person in charge. Tell them we need to end this now. Well, the reason is it was Monday. Who on the work day after a holiday is hanging around in a park? The Democrats tried to lead you to believe that, they're going after children and their caregivers. No, you know who hangs out at the park? Gang members. MacArthur Park notoriously has been awash with criminal elements, specifically Hispanic gangs. New York Post, LA Mayor Karen Bass confronts heavily armed federal agents in immigration sweep. Border Patrol official declares, better get used to us. Indeed. ABC News 7, bystanders confront federal immigration agents as they descend on MacArthur Park. They don't say anything about gangs being in the park, of course. The raid began unfolding just before 11 a.m. Federal agents holding weapons and standing on armored vehicles. The agents were not wearing any identification as they rolled through the park. I don't know about that. They brought terror to our community. They didn't have the guts to stick around because they knew if they stick around, it was going to be really do a big raid. The community would come out and defend the people. Good luck with that. It's the federalist system. The law of the land, as Stephen Miller said, is federal law, especially with the laws that are relegated to the federal government, which is border and immigration enforcement. That's not states' responsibility. So they don't have a responsibility there. They should stand aside. Now, the result of this, Washington Times is reporting Manassas Republican Party headquarters vandalized over July 4th weekend. Not only that, but what we did have is other ICE facilities being attacked, including, One America News reports, gunmen killed during ambush targeting Texas Border Patrol agents amidst flash floods. At the start of the week, 27-year-old man was armed with a rifle and wearing tactical gear, opened fire on Texas Border Patrol agents, resulting in his death only. 2 officers and a Border Patrol employee were injured, including 1 shot in the knee. They named the suspect as Ryan Luis Mosqueda and was identified as the shooter. Shooting transpired at the Border Patrol facility across the street from McAllen International Airport. Apparently, it was from Michigan. Again, another guy traveling over state lines with rifles, tons of ammunition. Who the fuck was this guy? Obviously wound up, wittingly, unwittingly, either by Democratic rhetoric or the news media, or both. Probably with an online person chatting in his ear, a little bird whispering in his ear. Federalist is reporting on this story. Shooter attacked border agents hours after Dems said their voters want blood. Yeah, that's true. In a Monday article published by Axios, Democrat leaders told the outlet their supporters want more from them, including blood, to fight against Trump's illegal immigration efforts. That same day, a man with a rifle and tactical gear shot at Border Patrol agents and local law enforcement in McAllen, Texas, resulting in a police officer being injured and the shooter being killed, according to Fox News. Our own base is telling us that what we're doing is not good enough, that there needs to be blood to grab attention of the press and the public. They already did this with their stupid op in Minnesota that didn't resonate. So what did they do? When they want blood, so they wind up somebody. I'm going to get to the psychology of this in just a second. The congressman said that grassroots supporters are telling lawmakers that when they enter ICE facilities, they need to be willing to get shot. Oh my goodness. And the reason I'm going to get into this is because of this headline. Also from Axios. CIA admits shadowy officer monitored Oswald before JFK assassination. New records reveal. Now, I had talked about this yesterday, both these cases. And the reason I'm bringing it up again is that this is from 1963. And who is this guy that was shadowing, monitoring Oswald? A guy called George Gionides. Who was this guy? Gionides was the deputy chief of the CIA's Miami branch, overseeing all aspects of political action and psychological warfare. The point I'm making here is that you think it's the Democrats and the mainstream media that are winding up these fucking people? It's not. To some degree, yes, it's providing propaganda. However, for people to be activated to take action, there needs to be a more sophisticated psychological operation, which means somebody over the internet communicating with these people and goading them into doing these things. Sometimes as one sock puppet individual, sometimes as many sock puppet individuals, as one person posing as like 10 or 12, trying to get this guy convinced that he's doing the right thing. Or now it's mostly done with AI. Which is the point I was trying to make. With the fact that a shooter attacked border agents hours after Dems said their voters wanted blood. Who's the voter? What voters? Who's listening? Who's monitoring? It's the intelligence community. The people that are launching these sophisticated psychological, it's really mind control. Oh, by the way, did the CIA ever study mind control? Come on. All right, let's get into other news. We don't have a lot of time here. So, zero hedge. Germany's pension Ponzi scheme is collapsing. What's coming next? Well, it's a pay-as-you-go system, but declining demographics show that they're going to be out of money. California rejects Education Department's Title IX violation offer regarding transgender athletes. So Linda McMahon and the Department of Education did the same thing they did to Pennsylvania, and now they did to California. California said, go pound sand. The Department of Education concluded its investigation into allegations of violation last month, finding that California violated federal law by complying with state law and allowing athletes to compete on teams based on gender identity. PJ Media, biology isn't bigotry. California's war on girls' sports. California chose ideology over integrity. Not only did the state ignore federal warnings, but it also doubled down on its actions. They refused to enter into a resolution agreement. They refused to even acknowledge the harm done to female athletes. And now California stands posed to become the first test case, an open challenge of both federal authority and common sense. Speaking of common sense, New York Post, I wasn't even going to run this article. Zohran Mamdani SAT score reveals after Columbia application, African-American bombshell. So he said he's African-American or black or whatever. But the thing is that when they ask you, that's your ethnicity. That's not your nationality. So either he was stupid and confused or he blatantly lied. Okay, because he's obviously not African-American. He's not black. He lived in Africa. He lived in Uganda and he came to this country. But when they ask you they're African-American, white, whatever, they're asking you your ethnicity, not your nationality. PJ Media, with identity politics on the defensive in universities, Marxism continues to thrive. Identity politics is the new Marxism. It's postmodernism, which is loosely based on Mao, and it's sort of Maoist in the sense of you can use any divisive political dichotomy and pin one person against the other. So now it's oppression, it's oppressive, the oppressor versus the oppressed, which has always been part of Marxism, you know, whether you want to believe that or not. So it goes into the fact that Zohran Mamdani, who is an exemplar of American college graduate, is true because he might have had some predisposition, but if you're going to a mainstream college as a young person and you don't know shit about shit, you're going to come out, besides young people who are put into debt through their college experience, are poor. And it's the poor that are attracted to Marxist or other divisive ideologies. But now it's not so much because now a lot of the allies are middle-class people, but they're fighting for the little guy, which the people are actually not being oppressed. Yeah. I'm not going to get too much in the text. Social justice dominating our college and university assumes that a foundational Marxist class conflict at the heart of its intersectionalism. Society is divided between evil oppressors and helpless victims, as I said. If you didn't see this photo of Hakeem Jeffries, dubbed Massive Clown for posting warped photo, working on those editing skills. If you didn't see it, he tries to make, I guess, his hips look narrower. So he looks more jaunty and more physically fit, which he isn't. And what they did is they used a pinch in Photoshop, which makes something smaller, like uses a wide angle lens effect. But the problem is it affects straight lines. And as you can see in the bench, and if you've ever been, those benches aren't made with rubber, right? So he's not leaning into and bending the bench. You can even see in the comparison there. But you can see it's a Photoshop technique, uses a pinch. And I said once before that I'm actually a photographic expert in that regard. So I can tell when things are manipulated, depending on the resolution. But sometimes when they get lazy, they're like this. They do real quick and they think people won't notice, even when the CIA is doing it. More news, just the news. DeSantis pleased with improvements in Florida school accountability ratings. Yep, only 71 out of Florida's 3,451 public schools received a failing grade. I wanted to get back into this just briefly, is the fact that there were only 49 elementary schools, 6 middle schools, and only two high schools that received unsatisfactory scores, which is good. Of the state's combined schools, 322 earned top ratings and only 14 received failing marks. Awesome. Federalist Against Citizen Volunteers got 20,000 people who moved out of Pennsylvania off the voter rolls. Now, it's hard to understand whether or not this was a result of Musk's doing, because people were paid to go out there and help. The effect of the letter-writing campaign is undeniable when compared to the number of removals at the request of the voter over the last 12 years. So, in other words, when people leave the state, they don't notify the state that they're leaving, that, hey, I'm not going to be here, so take me off the voter roll. Nobody does that. But the effect of a letter-writing campaign can change the results of elections. So get out there and volunteer politically, particularly on the, if you're going to volunteer for voter integrity, because there's a lot of malfeasance going on. The Democrats don't want to talk about it, and the people that say there's no voter fraud, all we get is lies. Everything you see over the television practically is a lie. National Review. Yes, the press should tell voters when elected officials are senile. Should they or shouldn't they? Of course they should. And there's more than just Joe Biden. But the fact is, if they're favored, then they get a free pass. And that's not the point. There are a lot of people, including people in the media, who believe on the administrative state. Like, what we need is administrators. It doesn't matter who stands up in front of the press and press conferences, etc., as a figurehead. We need an administrative state, the best, it's basically a technocracy. We get the best of the best economists, the best people. But that's not who you vote for. You can vote democratically, and the Democrats are against democracy. You could vote for an economist, like they did in Argentina with Javier Milei. He's a libertarian economist. If you want to vote for an economist, you can. But you cannot undermine democracy and the will of the voter, the Republican, a democratic, constitutional republic. You don't want to undermine that by just saying, let the corporations appoint administrators. Fox News former Biden doctor asked to delay testimony to House committee investigating mental fitness. House Oversight Committee accuses White House physician of stonewalling investigation into auto pen use. Yeah. They're all clamming up now because the Trump administration removed executive privilege. More on the Trump Front Zero hedge. Trump confirms arms for Ukraine U-turn days after Pentagon halts delivery. He was trying to bluff out Putin. He has no love for Zelensky. But he told Putin, he's like, can we stop the fighting? And he goes, look, I'll stop arms shipments to Ukraine. So he tried to further a deal with Russia, and it looks like Putin isn't interested. So, if that's the case, if you're suing for peace and the opposition doesn't want to come to the table, I would beg Russia and Vladimir Putin to do this. But who knows what's going on behind the scenes? There's a lot of shit we don't know. And now we have Mark Rutte, the General Secretary of NATO, saying that it's going to be a sneak attack. Russia is going to provide cover for China's invasion of Taiwan. We'll see. Trump changes tune on giving aid to Ukraine, says U.S. will send more weapons now. Like I said, Trump admitted that he would have to send more weapons to help Ukraine so it could defend itself as Russia ups its attacks. Indeed. To be honest with you, everybody, when you're in truce negotiations during wartime, right before you reach a settlement, the people are going to trade the most vicious fighting before a truce. It happens all the time. Zero hedge again. Ukrainian oligarchs have become incredibly rich from the war, writes a Swiss newspaper. Yeah, I mean, it's a corrupt country. You're sending millions and billions of dollars there. Of course it has. But the same thing happened with Russia. We created oligarchs there. When the Soviet Union collapsed, we infused money because we liked that system of oligarchs. Also, some from Zero Hedge, China smartphone sales plunge in May. China's on the ropes, folks, if you didn't know. It's not like here, it's like people have disposable income in the bank. People in China don't have a disposable income. And not only that, they're more pragmatic. So when they either lose their job or threaten with losing their job, they stop spending. More news from Just the News. Is Musk's new party nothing more than a spoiler? That may be what he wants. I talked at length about this during some chats this morning, and what I'm saying is that why doesn't he create a new party on the left to supplant the corrupt DNC? That would be something if you want to save America. But if you're truly concerned with being conservative and stopping the spending, you should stay on the conservative side and help MAGA, which was a third party that supplanted the Republican Party now, took it over, and is winning. But the point is, the economy is the rising tide that lifts all boats. You have to spur economic growth, Elon, by spending. But spending money on things that spur growth, not just giving people handouts. That causes inflation. Not going to get into that. Text. Fox News, children health declines in the last 17 years. Study finds research shows American kids more likely to die than children in comparable countries. Why? Well, NPR says our seed oil is actually bad for your health. Here's the science behind it. Blah, 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 blah. Bunch of bullshit. Hey, NPR, guess what? It's like decaffeinated coffee. If the processes used to create seed oils use petrochemicals, that's why they're bad for you. So eating seeds, or nuts for that matter, seeds and nuts both have lectins. So that's a kind of toxin at low levels that's supposed to prohibit animals from eating the reproductive parts of plants. However, seeds are not bad for you. It's the process in which you create seed oil, which is a chemical process using very toxic chemicals. And any toxicity in your body causes inflammation, et cetera, et cetera. New York Times. Kennedy's battle against food dyes hits a roadblock, M&Ms. The health secretary has used peer pressure to persuade food makers to nix synthetic dyes, which they have. The candy industry is holding out, arguing American consumers like bright sweets. Doesn't matter. Sugar is bad for you, and he knows that. So it's like trying to make cigarettes healthier for you. It doesn't matter. So who cares if M&Ms stay brightly colored with dangerous dyes? I don't care. I don't eat candy. Why? Because I'm a fucking adult. One American News, President Trump defends former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, who's been under attack. And if you knew anything about this, you'd know that Jair Bolsonaro, they almost used the exact blueprint of how they attacked Trump to attack Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro, which was also a populist right-wing figure in Brazil, which gave back individual liberties to the Brazilian public, including owning firearms so you could fight back against the gangs, and then employed some tactics used by Bukele in El Salvador to fight the favela gangs in the slums of Brazil. But what did Brazil do with its communist Supreme Court? You know what they did? They removed the sanctions on Lula da Silva, who was a communist, who was convicted of corruption and jailed. they allowed him to run again, and miraculously he won against a super popular candidate of Jair Bolsonaro. Brazil is doing a terrible thing of their treatment of former President Jair Bolsonaro. I have watched as the world, as they have done nothing to come after him day after day, night after night, month after month, year after year. He's not guilty of anything except having fought for the people. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but you see what he's saying here. It's just, he was the best thing for Brazil. The system couldn't have that. He's out. Couple more headlines. Planned Parenthood sues Trump administration over planned defunding. It doesn't really matter because the Supreme Court ruled that states don't have to fund abortion because they're trying to say we're a healthcare clinic, women's health. Ripping a fetus out of your womb is healthy. Anybody who tells you different is a liar. And then the last article here is from the Associated Press. Investors snap up growing share of U.S. homes as traditional buyers struggle to afford them. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment down below, share the podcast, give me a thumbs up. Appreciate you. Hope everybody had a great July 4th weekend. On the reason prices are high, not only is because of illegal immigration, which expands the people seeking housing, but also you have investors buying up houses at any cost. They don't even care, which is a problem because the more the demand, the higher the price. So if things seem unaffordable, you can blame the crazy, because I have a couple properties and I get letters every friggin' day that I want your property. I'm like, you can't have it. So they're looking to snap up all the property. And like I said, the whole thing is an indentured servitude. Your slavery is not only will you not be allowed to own anything, there'll be no way you can own anything. You'll have to rent. You can't own a car. You can't own gas. You can't own a house. You're going to have to rent everything. And that's why they want to get out of single family dwellings. They want all these sort of particular buildings that are like apartment blocks and such, like things like that. So I don't want to run too long on that, but I appreciate everybody joining me today. Don't forget you're under attack psychologically and biologically, so stay hip to the trick, especially if people are telling you to attack. Don't do it. Get a hold of yourself, you lunatic, you maniac. And check me out on social media, X, Facebook, Gettermine, Choose Social, Substack. See you tomorrow. Oh, no Tuesdays with Perry tonight. I'm going to do it tomorrow night because I got a meeting tonight. But thanks for joining me today. See you tomorrow. Respect.
You're crazy. You're crazy, man. You're crazy. I like you. But you're crazy.
The New World Order.
I'm an American. I have rights.